Hey, book lovers. Welcome to While I Read. I'm Katie Dodrell, and today I'll be talking about 10 popular, prolific authors of thriller books and telling you my favorite books by these authors. As you know, I read a lot of thrillers, and for many of these authors, I've read most, if not all, of the books that they've written. Maybe you're interested in trying some of these authors, or maybe you just want to get more into the thriller book genre and you're not sure where to start. Hopefully, this video will give you some ideas. Let's start with one of my favorite authors, often considered the queen of the thriller genre, Ruth Ware. I've read all of Ruth Ware's books. I think she's written about 10 thriller books now. She's often compared to Agatha Christie, and I definitely agree with that comparison. Her books are exciting and suspenseful. They often feature cool settings like a ski resort in One by One or a luxury ship in The Woman in Cabin 10, or her new book, One Perfect Couple, is set on an isolated island. My favorite book by Ruth Ware is 0 Days. It was number 2 on my top 10 list of 2023. I describe 0 Days to people as sort of like the British version of The Fugitive. You remember The Fugitive with Harrison Ford, right? Except that 0 Days has a female main character. The main character, Jack, and her husband, Gabe, work as penetration specialists, meaning that they're hired by companies to find the physical and technological weaknesses in their buildings and computer systems. At the very beginning of the book, Jack comes home from a job to find her husband, Gabe, dead. I'm not giving away any spoilers here. You can read this in the synopsis of the book. So Jack ends up being suspected of committing the murder of her husband. She has to go on the run to try to clear her name and try to figure out who really murdered her husband. I do have to say, the beginning of the book was very sad. I knew going into it that Gabe was going to die, so I was prepared for it. But it was still very sad because he seemed like a sweet guy, a great husband. The book does a good job of showing Jack's heartbreak at losing her husband and how she continues to process that throughout the entire book. But it's also action-packed as she is running from the law. She's trying to figure out who really did this. She's trying to find connections in her husband's life to see why someone would want to murder him. It's extremely exciting. I've heard some people say that 0 Days is a lot different from Ruth Ware's other books, and they didn't like that. It is different because it's more action-based than her other books that are thrillers in maybe more of a domestic suspense type of category, but I loved it. It's my favorite of her books. It would be a great book to read if you're about to go on vacation and you want a good, exciting book to keep your interest. It's also a great place to start with Ruth Ware. The next author I'll discuss is Lucy Foley. She's the author of several popular mystery thriller books, including The Paris Apartment and The Guest List. She's also got The Midnight Feast coming out in this next month or two, which is one of my most anticipated books of the summer. My favorite book by Lucy Foley is the first book I read by her, The Hunting Party. It's about 7 longtime friends who get together every year to bring in the new year. They're in their 30s now, and they've been doing this tradition since they were in college. A different friend chooses the location where they'll meet every year, and they always try to outdo each other by choosing the best place. This year, they're at an isolated estate in the Scottish Highlands. They're planning to spend a few nights together, have some nice meals, and enjoy this beautiful remote area of the world. But while they're there, a blizzard hits, making them even more isolated. By New Year's Day, one of the friends is dead and another one did it. Each chapter of the book is told from a different perspective. You find out the hidden secrets and connections that some of the friends have. I loved reading the descriptions of this isolated, remote Scottish estate. I was on the edge of my seat reading this book, wanting to find out what happened. The chapters are short and the book is just really compelling and hard to put down. It's a great book to read anytime, probably especially in the winter because it's set during a blizzard at a New Year's Eve party. It would definitely be a great introduction to Lucy Foley. Next, we'll talk about Riley Sager. I don't consider Riley Sager one of my favorite authors, but I have read most of his books. His books are fast-paced and addictive. They're hard to put down. If you're making a list of popular and prolific thriller authors, you have to include Riley Sager. It's hard for me to pick a favorite Riley Sager book because in pretty much all of his books, there are things that I absolutely love and things that I absolutely hate. For the sake of this list, I'm going to choose Lock Every Door as my favorite Riley Sager book. Full disclosure, I almost chose The House Across the Lake because I really do like The House Across the Lake, but there are things that I really dislike in it, and I think I dislike them more than the things that I dislike in Lock Every Door. Lock Every Door is about a young woman named Jules who gets a job as an apartment sitter in a famous New York hotel called the Bartholomew. Jules is desperate for a job. I think she's literally on the verge of homelessness. And now she gets to live in this beautiful, luxurious apartment with all of these rich, famous people. There's even a famous author that Jules loved as a child who lives there. But there are some pretty strict rules that Jules has to follow. She can never have any visitors. She's not allowed to spend a night away from the apartment. She meets a fellow apartment sitter whom she likes, but then that woman disappears. Jules starts trying to figure out what happened to that woman, and she discovers that the Bartholomew has some pretty scary secrets. This is my favorite Riley Sager book for several reasons. I like the character of Jules. She's very relatable, she's sympathetic, and she's somewhat bookish since she's so excited to meet this famous author who lives in the Bartholomew. I liked the setting, this beautiful, mysterious building with a dark history that you find more and more about throughout the book. This book is fast-paced and twisty, and I couldn't put it down. It has a huge twist at the end that was nothing that I had expected. There are things that I like and things that I disliked about the twist. I can't really say much more than that without giving it away. I read this book several years ago and it has stayed with me. So if you're looking to try a Riley Sager book or just trying to find a good thriller to read, this is a great one to start with. And then maybe try House Across the Lake since that was almost my favorite Riley Sager book. The next thriller writer on my list is Rachel Hawkins. Rachel Hawkins has become a popular author within the past few years. I've read several books by her. I featured Reckless Girls on my list of great thriller books to read in the summer. But my favorite book by Rachel Hawkins is her first one, The Wife Upstairs. The Wife Upstairs is a reimagining of Charlotte Bronte's classic Jane Eyre, and it's set in Birmingham, Alabama. That concept alone made me want to read the book. Who would think of setting a classic British novel in Alabama? But it works. In the book, Jane is a dog walker in a gated community in Birmingham. We know that Jane has some secrets. Jane is not her real name. We know that she sometimes steals from her employers. We find out more and more about Jane as the book continues, and she's a very sympathetic character. She ends up working for a widower named Eddie Rochester. They start falling in love, and Jane gets a bit of a rags to riches story. But she can't stop wondering about Eddie's dead wife, Bee. She starts learning more about Bee's history, investigating how she died, and she finds out some pretty crazy stuff. This was such a fun book. Jane is a great, complex character, and like I said, I love the idea of setting Jane Eyre in a McMansion in Birmingham. This is a great book to start your Rachel Hawkins reading list. The next popular thriller book author that I'll talk about is Miranda. She publishes a new book just about every year. The one that I seem to hear the most about from her is All the Missing Girls. That one was okay to me, but my favorite one by her is The Perfect Stranger, published in 2017. This book is about a woman named Leah who is working as a teacher in rural Pennsylvania. Leah is actually a journalist, but she published an article that got her in trouble. She ended up losing her job. So she's kind of starting over, trying to figure out what to do with her life. She's living with an old friend named Emmy Gray, who has also had some problems that make her want a fresh start. Then some strange things happen. A woman who looks a lot like Leah gets attacked at the lake where they live, and then Emmy disappears. Leah reports Emmy's disappearance to the police, and as they start trying to find her, they can't find any trace of her. No family, no friends besides Leah, no social media. The police start to question whether Emmy actually exists, whether Leah just made her up for some reason. So Leah starts investigating what happened to Emmy, and she finds out some pretty crazy, dangerous things. This is a good, fast-paced, twisty book, and I enjoyed the descriptions of the lake and the area where they live. This doesn't seem to be one of Miranda's most popular books, but I really enjoyed it, and I think it would be a great place to start reading Miranda. Next, let's talk about Kate White. Kate White is one of my favorite authors, and she's obviously very popular, but for some reason, I don't hear her talked about that much. Maybe she's just been around for so long that it's not cool to talk about her anymore. But she can be relied on to consistently put out good books. If I pick up a thriller by Kate White, I know it's going to be a good book that holds my attention till the end and keeps me guessing. It's hard for me to pick a favorite Kate White book because she has 18 books now, and I've liked pretty much all of them. She does have her Bailey Wiggins series, which is about a journalist who solves murders. I like that series, but for this list, I'm going to recommend a standalone book because I think generally a standalone novel is a better introduction to an author. So my favorite book by Kate White is The Sixes. It was published in 2011, so it's been around for quite a while. It's about a woman named Phoebe. She's a writer, but she was accused of plagiarism in her last book. She's taking some time off from writing, and she gets offered a job as a professor at a small college in Pennsylvania. The president of the college is actually Phoebe's old friend from boarding school. So while she's teaching at this college, a student is found dead. The college president thinks the death may have to do with a possible secret society on campus known as the Sixes. She asked Phoebe to investigate the student's death as well as the Sixes. So Phoebe starts looking into what's going on campus. She finds some pretty surprising stuff, and she gets caught up in a dangerous situation. This book is set in the fall, and I always like to read it in October. It's on a college campus, and it has a nice, mysterious ambiance to it. I always love Kate White's characters, and Phoebe is one of my favorites. She's been through some tough situations, some of which are her fault and some of which aren't. And she has to rely on herself and her own strength and resilience to figure these situations out. She's also in her 40s, 43, I think, which is pretty unusual for a heroine in a thriller. It seems like most are in their 20s or 30s. So it's nice to read about a more mature woman for a change. So if you've never read a book by Kate White, or maybe you've read a few books by her and want to find another good one, I'd recommend this one as a fun, atmospheric, twisty thriller. Next, let's talk about Lucy Clarke. Lucy Clarke is the author of a subgenre called destination thrillers. Basically, thrillers that take place in exotic locations. I featured her book, The Blue, on my list of good summer thrillers because it takes place on a yacht. But my favorite book by Lucy Clarke is her most recent one, The Hike. The Hike is about four friends, Maggie, Liz, Helena, and Joni, who go for a hike in the Norwegian wilderness. These women have been friends for a long time. They have a lot of history together, maybe some secrets, maybe some things they're keeping from each other. The book is about their hike in this beautiful, dangerous, remote area of Norway. It's got beautiful descriptions of lakes, mountains, forest. The setting and scenery are basically characters in this book. Some of the conflict in the book has to do with the women dealing with nature, but of course, the main conflict is with other people, other hikers who may be dangerous, possibly even some conflicts among each other. Each chapter is from a different woman's point of view. Of course, you'll probably like some of the characters more than others. My favorite was Maggie. But I liked the alternating chapters and how they gradually revealed more about each woman. The beautiful descriptions of the setting and scenery on their hike were my favorite parts of this book. It's a great introduction to Lucy Clarke and will make you want to read more destination thrillers. The next author on my list, Catherine Ryan Howard, is probably known best for her thriller set in Ireland during the COVID lockdown, 56 Days. But my favorite book by her is Runtime. I've actually been dreading having to give a synopsis of this book. It wasn't really hard for me to follow while reading it, but I think trying to explain it is going to be tough. It's about a young Irish actress named Adele. She's been a successful actress in Ireland, but she's had some tough breaks and she's come to Hollywood to try to make it, but she's not having much success there either. So when she gets a phone call from an Irish filmmaker offering her the lead part in a movie, she jumps at the chance, even though some aspects of this job seem a little strange. She gets to the set and finds that it's at an isolated house in the middle of the woods. She's playing a character named Kate, who is staying at an isolated house in the middle of the woods. This is where things might start getting confusing, so bear with me. While Kate, the movie character, is staying at this isolated cabin, she finds a book that she starts reading. The book is set in an isolated cabin and scary things happen in it. And the same scary things start happening to Kate as she's reading the book. Meanwhile, Adele, the actress playing Kate, starts having the same scary things from the movie script happen to her. So the book is about Adele trying to figure out what's going on and trying to survive this scary situation that she finds herself in. This book was just so good. From the minute I picked it up, I could barely put it down. I liked the character of Adele, and I also liked the movie character of Kate. It was suspenseful and twisty, and I really liked how things were wrapped up at the end. I feel like this is a great book to get you started on Catherine Ryan Howard and just on thrillers in general because it's such a neat concept and it's unputdownable. Next, I'll talk about Catherine Steadman. Fun fact, Catherine Steadman is not only an author, she's an actress who played Mabel Lane Fox on Downton Abbey. She has quite a few popular books. My favorite by her is The Family Game. The Family Game is about a woman named Harriet, Harry for short, who is a fairly successful author. She's had one pretty popular book and she's working on writing her second one now. At the beginning of the book, she gets engaged to a man named Edward Halbeck. The Halbeck family is one of the richest families in America. Think the Vanderbilts or the Hiltons. They are very rich and very powerful and very well known. Edward says that he's not that close to his family, but when he and Harry get engaged, they start being invited to family functions, and Harry starts learning more about this family. The very first time that Harry meets Edward's father, Robert Halbeck, he slips her a cassette tape that reveals something very shocking. And so Harriet starts trying to understand what it means, if it's true, and why he gave it to her. The book has some great sections that focus on different aspects of Harry's life and her investigation of Robert Halbeck. She's a writer, and I always enjoy reading about writers. The book has a really great scene about the family's celebration of Krampusnacht, and it is deliciously creepy and fun. The climax takes place on the Halbeck family estate, and it's very exciting and suspenseful. It was a fun book that kept me turning pages throughout. It's a great introduction to Catherine Steadman and will make you want to read more by her. Finally, I'm going to end this list of my favorite thrillers by popular authors with one of my favorite authors of all time, Mary Stewart. The other authors on this list have all been people who are currently writing, but Mary Stewart, of course, is not. She was at her most popular in the 1950s through the 1980s. She's well known for her Merlin trilogy of Arthurian legends, but I really like her books of romantic suspense. They may not have much in common with thrillers that are written today, but they are exciting and suspenseful, and I've loved them for years. I really can't pick a favorite book by Mary Stewart, so I'm just choosing one at random to talk about. Wildfire at Midnight was published in 1956 and is Mary Stewart's second novel. It's about a woman named Gianetta who goes to the remote island of Skye in the Scottish Highlands. She's staying at this isolated hotel there for a relaxing vacation from her job as a model. She also wanted to escape London during Queen Elizabeth II's coronation. So it's cool to read about that little bit of history that was happening as this book was being written. But Gianetta does not get the peaceful trip she was hoping for. First, she discovers that her ex-husband is staying at the same hotel where she is, a pretty crazy coincidence since it's so remote. Then she finds out that there has recently been a brutal murder in the area. A young local woman has been killed in what seems like a ritual sacrifice, and she is rumored to have been seeing a man staying at the hotel. All of the men at the hotel are suspects. It's a classic locked room mystery. Soon, others at the hotel start disappearing, and Gianetta becomes involved in some very dangerous situations. I love the beautiful descriptions of this remote area with mountains and lakes. There's one scene that takes place during a fog where Giannetta is trying to get away from the murderer. She can't see anything in front of her. That scene is just suspenseful and scary and will keep you on the edge of your seat. The historical aspects are cool too. Like I said, Queen Elizabeth II's coronation is mentioned, and the people at the hotel hear about Edward Hillary's historic climb of Mount Everest. That actually becomes important to the plot. The one thing I don't like about the book is that it presents some very old-fashioned ideas about relationships that I definitely don't agree with. If you read the book, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, and it will probably make you angry. Just remember that I'm not recommending the book because of that. The rest of the book is so good that I can overlook that one aspect that I don't like. It's a great introduction to Mary Stewart and just an all-around creepy, fun read. It would be a good book to read in the summer because it's set in May and June in this beautiful location on an island. So there you have it, my favorite books by 10 popular thriller authors. I hope this has given you some ideas for new authors or books that you might like to try. If you've read any of these books, please comment about what you think. Or if you have recommendations for other books or authors, please drop those in the comments. And of course, if you liked this video and want to get more book recommendations and reviews, please subscribe to my channel. Now, go mow your lawn while I read.